press between the pages of my mind. Memories sweeten through the ages just like wine. Quiet thoughts come floating down and settle softly to the ground like gold of autumn leaves around my feet. I touch them and they burst apart with sweet memories. Sweet memories of holding hands and red bouquets and twilights trimmed in purple haze and laughing eyes and simple ways and quiet nights and gentle days with you. Memories press between the pages of my mind. Memories sweeten through the ages just like wine. Memories, memories of holding hands and red bouquets and twilights trimmed in purple haze and laughing eyes and simple ways and quiet nights and gentle days with you. Memories press between the pages of my mind. Memories sweetened through the ages just like wine. Memories, memories, sweet memories, memories.
An old friend of mine once accidentally said that we all make mistakes. Although my mother thought that she chose well in the beginning, I'm afraid that my dad and stepdad turned out to be bad choices, which she found out after marrying them. The only good things that came out of those two marriages were my sisters Penny, Sherry, and Melody. Until recently, I was unsure about myself as I got older, thinking that I was a mistake and a burden. Although I now know that God doesn't make mistakes, I can't help but believe that the two men that my mother married was. I would like to think that God could have brought us into this world through different and better men. But I've wondered if me and my sisters would be who we are today if our fathers was someone else. We'll never know. Mine and Penny's father was very abusive, which got worse as the marriage went along. Although I was very young, his actions were so disturbing that I haven't been able to forget them. I remember being put in front of the stereo before I could walk. He would then turn it on as loud as it could go, just to scare me and see how high I could jump. One day, Sandy, my aunt, was there when he did that, and the conversation wasn't good between the two, as she picked me up and started hugging me and trying to calm me down. Another time it was winter and it just snowed. My mother and him was arguing again. He grabbed me and took me to the car, and then Mother grabbed her coat, and before she could take me from him or get in the car with us, he was already driving the two of us off somewhere. She was running after us on the street. Although he was driving slow, he drove fast enough so she couldn't catch up. I stood up in the front seat, turned around, and started crying as I saw her chasing us. He was looking in the mirror, laughing at her. He finally stopped a few blocks later. It wasn't long after she had Penny when she left him. The three of us was better off without him. That is when I got close to my grandparents and the Grahams. Papa was the only father that I had at that time. I have always believed that the events with my grandparents and the Grahams are so memorable and special because the man that my mother married never cared to be a father. When we was young, me and Penny would stay with our grandparents on some weekends, especially during the summer season. In the morning, Mama would wake us up with a warm, moist rag, gently rubbing it on our legs, arms, and face. That was as close as we got to heaven without being there. After getting up and dressed, breakfast was waiting on the table, and Papa would sit down with us. Eating meals with him in the morning is something that I'll always cherish. When we were through and left the table, the four of us would leave the house with Mama and Papa headed for work. With Papa being a construction worker, me and Penny never had a chance to spend time with him like we did with Mama. He would drop us off at the Stephen F. Austin Hotel before going to his job. As we were getting out of the car, he would say, "Penny and Wayne, y'all be good." I would always reply, "Okay, I love you, Papa." As we shut the door, he would tell me, "I love you too, son." He would then drive off as we were walking into the hotel. After many years, the time gone by almost made me forget that small yet important word. Having a father was very important to me. As we headed to the basement, which is where Mama worked, my heart was joyful as I felt proud to be the grandson of Houston and Gladys Williams. Mama was in charge of the maids. As we walked through the hotel, people that worked there and knew me and Penny would notice us. After reaching her office, Mama would give daily assignments to each maid. One of them was also named Gladys. She would let me follow her as she cleaned the hotel rooms that she was in charge of. Thinking that I was helping her, she would be behind me correcting everything that I was doing wrong. After returning to the basement, the kitchen would make a call around noon, asking me and Penny what we wanted for lunch. Although they already knew my answer, I would tell them a hamburger with mayonnaise and cheese only, along with French fries and a Coca-Cola. The same waiter would bring our food, table, and chairs on the elevator. After setting it up, he would put a tablecloth on it. We would sit down and he would scoot us in. Once again, they made my hamburger perfect, as each bite was moist and flavorful. After lunch, we would be ready for a nap, especially after trying to help make beds all day. Like the waiter, the same janitor would bring down the rollaway bed and make it up for us. Mama would then cover us up and we would sleep while she continued working. When we woke up a few hours later, the man that operated the elevator would let me ride on it, allowing me to operate it for a few minutes, watching me closely and making sure that I didn't lose control. After going back to the basement, it would be time for Mama to clock out and go home. She would call a taxi. When we was at the front door, the taxi driver would be waiting for us. He would open the doors for us, shut them once we were in, and then take us back to Mama's and Papa's. Papa was still at work and wouldn't be home for a few more hours. Me and Penny spent another memorable day with Mama at the Stephen F. Austin Hotel. It was now time to get ready for another trip to Cleveland and visit the rest of the family, the Grahams. God's legacies. If we're made in God's image, which I've read and do believe, then that may explain the many beverages and foods that has been given to us. When I was writing that poem many years ago, I was thinking that God isn't a picky eater, and He probably loves to eat as much as we do. At times I've wondered what His favorite comfort food is. The way things are today, He has to have at least one. As for me and Penny, our favorite one could be fried chicken, which began many years ago thanks to our mom and Mama. I honestly don't know who came first. As for Mama, the times that I remember her frying chicken the most is when she came home from work and vacation had begun. Me and Penny was with her after spending the day with her at the Stephen F. Austin Hotel. It was now time to take another trip to Cleburne, Texas to see the Grahams. Earlier in the week, she went to the store and bought a large package of chicken legs. It was now time to fry them. As each one was done, they would be put on a plate with napkins so they would cool off. The aroma was in every room of the house, causing my stomach to wake up. The last ones that she fried was for supper. They were served with green beans, corn, and cornbread. Me, Penny, and Papa were happy campers after having a meal such as that. If we were lucky, we would have her famous grape cobbler for dessert, which she made as long as I can remember, taking the recipe when she left us. No one in this family has figured out how to make it. I look forward to eating it again someday. Before going to bed, Mama would roll each drumstick in foil and put them in a small brown lunch sack before sticking them in the icebox. It was a good thing that her purse was able to expand. The next morning before leaving, it was already full of other things when she got the drumsticks out of the icebox and literally crammed them in with everything else. I would have carried them suckers if I had to. Before going to work, Papa dropped us off at the bus station. As everyone was waiting to be called onto the bus, I saw our suitcases being thrown into one of them, hoping that it was the correct one. When the passengers for the trip to Cleburne was called over the speaker, we went and found our seats. We then found a place to put our things that we took onto the bus before sitting down and getting settled for the day. After the trip started, the bus made a stop every few miles, which is what made the trip to Cleburne an all-day event. Making sure that we were fed, Mama would ask us a few times during the trip if we were getting hungry. If so, she would get us out one of the drumsticks, unwrap it from the foil, and put a napkin around the bottom part before giving them to us. When we were through, we would wash it down with a glass of water from one of Papa's canisters, while she was wrapping the bare chicken bone back into the foil. By the time we reached Cleburne, our stomachs was filled with Mama's fried chicken. If we were lucky, and there was some left from the night before, and there was still some room in her purse, our dessert sometime during the trip would be more of her great cobbler. Uncle Wilbur, Aunt Kitty, and our cousin Joy met us at the bus station. We were going to spend the next week with them, Mama Graham, Aunt Zelma, and any other Graham that dropped by that week. At one time, Cleburne was once considered as home away from home for the entire family. That's where Mama Graham was. Wherever she was, that's where home was for everyone. Mama told me that Aunt Eloise would send the family $100 each before we went to Cleburne. Everyone tried telling her that it wasn't necessary, but she insisted. Mama used her money for the bus tickets. The others used theirs on food. Even if she hadn't done that, the family was still wanting us to come. I didn't get to see her as much as I had hoped, but after hearing that, I realized that Aunt Eloise helped make our trips to Cleburne more special than I had once thought. Our summers would not have been the same if we was unable to see the Grahams. After arriving in Cleburne and being picked up at the bus station, Uncle Wilbur, Aunt Kitty, and Joy once again drove us to their house. This was considered as the entire family's home away from home. Where Mama Graham was, that was home for everyone. It was wonderful being on the farm again and hearing the cows as we entered the house. Beginning the next day and during the week, we spent the mornings and afternoons at Uncle Wilbur's and Aunt Kitty's. The aroma of the breakfast being prepared would wake me up every morning. Aunt Kitty cooked something different almost every morning. Once or twice, we would have pancakes. Another morning or two, she would fix biscuits and gravy with grits, eggs, hash browns, bacon, and toast, which was my favorite, would be fixed a few times during the week as well. By the time we went home, my mom would notice that I was a few pounds heavier. When we was finished eating, Penny and Joy would keep each other company while I went outside to find Uncle Wilbur and watch him work on the farm. I would then want to help. It depended on what he was doing, on whether I could or couldn't. Sometime during the day, I would get around to asking him once again if I could ride the horse. When he was finished with his work, he'd put me on the horse and let me ride once again. Around noon, it would be time for lunch. When we was through eating, we would take our daily nap. After getting up, we spent a few more hours on the farm before Mama told us to take a bath. That's how we knew that it was almost time to see Aunt Zelma and Mama Graham once again. From what I've been told by Mama, Uncle Wilbur, Aunt Fay, Uncle Albert, and a few others, John Graham, my great-grandfather, turned out to be more of a burden and violent man instead of a provider, husband, and father. Every dollar made was spent at the bar. He was driving home from one when he died in a car accident. It's sad to say, but it sounds as if his children didn't shed many tears at his funeral. They all agreed to take care of and provide for Mama Graham and Grandpa Graham's mother themselves. That included Aunt Zelma, which lived with Mama Graham in her later years. If she wasn't willing to do that, some of Mama Graham's great-grandkids, including myself, would not have been lucky enough to know her. I was aware of that even then. After getting cleaned up and taking a bath after being outside and trying to help Uncle Wilbur on the farm, Mama would help us dress, comb our hair, and ask us if we had brushed our teeth. I would say yes, and then run to the bathroom and brush as I heard her and Aunt Kitty laugh. When I was finished, we went to see Aunt Zelma and Mama Graham, which I had waited for all day. Uncle Wilbur drove us over there. He would go in with us to see Mama Graham and Aunt Zelma, and then he would return home a few minutes later. Mama Graham would ask me, "What did you do today, Wayne?" My reply would be, "I tried to help Uncle Wilbur some." She would then ask me, "Did he let you?" When I said yes, she asked me one time if I wanted to be a farmer. The answer was yes, of course. If I told her no, her reply was, "Then let him do it by himself, and you come and see me." Every time that I heard that, I was unable to help myself, as I would give her a hug, knowing that like Mama, Mama Graham wanted me to see and be with her. Aunt Zelma would then ask us if we were getting hungry. Thinking that I did a lot that day trying to help Uncle Wilbur, my reply was yes. As it did at Mama's and Papa's, with Mama Graham's and Aunt Zelma's house also being fairly small, the aroma of dinner went through the house. I was hungry for sure when it was ready. Mama would call me and Penny, and we would go to the table. Me and Penny found it important to sit by Mama Graham. Not one of us, but both of us. Each night we took turns on sitting beside Mama and Aunt Zelma. But not one night went by when both of us wasn't sitting beside Mama Graham. When we was finished eating, the table was cleared and the food was put up. The dishes would then be washed, rinsed, dried, and put in the cabinet. Aunt Zelma would be in the living room with me and Penny while Mama and Mama Graham sat at the table talking. At times, the TV would be on because of some shows that came on certain nights that Aunt Zelma enjoyed watching. I still remember two which I got hooked on for many years, which Aunt Zelma introduced me to. One of them was Gunsmoke, which I watched almost until the show went off. To this day, I still watch the reruns when an episode is showing that I haven't seen in a long time. The other show that she introduced me to was wrestling. As we sat on the floor in the living room in front of the TV, Aunt Zelma would bring fresh, cold carrots for each of us to snack on while watching the matches. She would point out the good and bad wrestlers before the matches started so that I would know who to cheer for and who to boo. The more exciting that the matches got, the louder that we would yell as we munched on our carrots faster. I think that we was Mama's and Mama Graham's entertainment. At times I can still see and hear them laughing at us from the table as we made fools out of ourselves in front of the television. To this day, I am unable to watch sports without snacking on baby carrots and some dip. At a young age, I started watching what is now movie classics, as well as certain TV shows, sports, and CBS News. Along with Aunt Zelma's favorite things that she watched, wrestling and Gunsmoke, I also watched Mama's and Papa's favorites when we was at home. Westerns with John Wayne and James Stewart, as well as Bob Hope's and Red Skelton's movies, along with their TV shows, was their favorites. I still watch the evening news on CBS. While smoking a cigarette, I don't know if Papa ever missed Walter Cronkite. But even when the television wasn't on, it was just nice being with my grandparents. The same goes with Aunt Zelma and Mama Graham. When the TV wasn't on at their house, I would then get my second cousin's records out. Ronnie hated it when I did that. He didn't like anyone touching his records. He knew, though, that I was always careful with them. He would once again say nothing and would put up with me for the following week. That is how and when I learned about the Beatles, Beach Boys, The Who, Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, and many, many others. He had a pile of records a mile high. I knew which singer was on each record because of the record labels. I would pick out my favorites again and play them. If I saw some new ones, I would listen to them and decide if they was another favorite or not. After listening to my favorites a few times each, I would then put them back up for another year. Another night, Mama and Aunt Zelma was going to play dominoes. That is when me and Penny was introduced to the game. Mama helped Penny and I was helped by Aunt Zelma. It was easy to understand the scoring rule. What was time-consuming was trying to figure out which domino to put down so that I could make points. At that time, I was needing 20 fingers instead of 10. If we were unable to make points, they would just tell us to put any domino down. As I got older, Mama kept showing me how to play until I didn't need her helping me anymore. Through the years, I would like to think that hers and Aunt Zelma's patience was not a waste of time since I win more than I lose. For some reason, though, I was never able to beat Maman. She somehow knew what dominoes I was going to have before I even picked them up. As the evenings came to an end, Uncle Wilbur would come and take us back to the farm. The darkness and peaceful countryside would help me to think of and relive the evening's events, making me look forward to the next day when we would return to see Mama Graham again. She truly was loved by everyone, especially me. It's strange how my mind wonders about the present, future, and past during the night. Them that comes to mind often is the Grahams. I grew to love them at an early age. I have always wished that Mama's vacation was longer. Before I knew it, the weekend had arrived, and it was time to ride the bus again and return to Austin. It would be another year before returning home and seeing the family again. Not knowing it at that time, the trips to Cleburne would be ending soon. I was unable and not wanting to get those memories out of my mind. I was then, am now, and always will be